Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show.
What you want to do is you want to get into the mindset of the person you're talking with. What is it that they value? What are the problems that they face? What are the issues that they need resolving in their world? And once you understand that, if what you offer can help them, then you can offer it to them, not, hey, I'm trying to sell you something, but, hey, I know what your problems are like. I've done this before. Would this help?
This is just one of the many great bits of advice that today's guest mentor, David B Horne, shares with us. And I have to say many because when we go through the intro into David's career journey, and it's a bit longer than usual, it's longer for a reason because it's just full of so much great experiences, moving between various countries, from North America over to Europe, working in different industries, working with large corporates, entrepreneurs, funding businesses, acquiring businesses, growing businesses, exiting them. Also some work he's done on a foundation, how he went about writing and selling a best-selling book. Just you'll find that through every part of the conversation there's something we can take away as an audience. Some of the key points that we do discuss is how to overcome inertia that we sometimes have as professionals or leaders, when it comes to engaging with business leaders, business people, stakeholders, and why we have to get to know them and the importance of asking them what they want. How we can also get ready to prepare with and deal with more intense environments, particularly for those considering embarking on careers in private equity, corporate finance or banking. And we also deconstruct the methodology underpinning David's book called Face, which is Fund, Acquire, Consolidate and Exit. And towards the end of the show, we go through an awful lot of great resources, which are of course trapped in our show notes that are linked to them as well. So if you want to go and check those out, they're at sitnshow.com/podcast/194. And it's a bit of a longer than usual podcast. I was very selfish about taking David's time on this one. And again, really appreciate him giving so much and entertaining us by sharing so many fantastic experiences. So look, as always, really appreciate you investing your time in the show and with us today. And of course, if you find anything useful that might help your friends or colleagues, please don't forget to let them know about the show, share with them, and you can also subscribe on the major platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud and YouTube. So that's enough from me. So without further ado, over to David and the show. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, David, look, we've spoken previously. We sort of got to know each other a bit, but maybe our audience might not be as familiar with your background. So would you mind maybe give us a brief introduction to your career journey in finance?
Absolutely. So I'm originally from Canada, hence the accent. Although occasionally I get told people think I'm Irish, but not like you. So I trained as a chartered accountant with PwC, moved with them from Canada to Switzerland, spent 2 years in Switzerland with PwC, and then got a job offer from my biggest client, which I joined, spent 4 years with them in Switzerland, and then was able to transfer with them here to London. So I moved to London in 1993 and have been here ever since. Spent another 5 or 6 years in big corporates with AT&T and the BBC, and then started moving into kind of smaller companies, more entrepreneurial businesses. I was with a New York-based PR agency group that had just expanded into Europe, and I was recruited as their European CFO. And spent 2 years working with the European chairman. We had a brief to build an agency network in Europe by acquisition, and we had New York's checkbook. So that was quite a lot of fun. And in 2 years, we bought 7 PR agencies in the UK, Belgium, and Germany. Did a lot of integration work in Germany, merging agencies together. I'm a fluent German speaker, so that worked out quite well. And we were merrily going on looking at other acquisition targets when our parent company got bought out by Interpublic Group. and we were merged into Weber Shandwick, which was IPG's PR brand, and they were way bigger than us. So once the integration stuff was done, I left and launched a consulting business, which was an interesting start. This was 2002. And I'd never been a consultant before. I'd never sold anything before. I'd only worked in finance. So it was quite an eye-opening experience. But I had two significant opportunities that came about, both due to my experience in the PR industry. One was a couple of the guys whose agency in Belgium we had bought. It was about a year after I left, and they contacted me. They really hated the new owners. IPG was a very bureaucratic company, whereas the company I'd been with had been quite entrepreneurial. And I worked with them to get everything set up so that there was a company ready to launch, so that as soon as their restrictive covenants were done, we launched the business on the following day and built that up over the next 7 years to be a business that turned over just under 5 million euros. And we sold that in 2010 to Edelman, one of the big global PR agency groups. So that was one strand. And the other strand, I was introduced to a man who had launched a cash shell on AIM. And he had a very clear buy and build strategy. He had been the chairman of a FTSE 100 company and had moved to non-exec chairman and decided in his spare time he was going to set up this AIM list business. And so I was introduced to him by one of my co-directors at the PR agency, who happened to sit on the board of the FTSE 100 company. And we had a few meetings, and then one day I got a phone call from him asking if I was still doing consulting, and I was. And he said, well, can you come in 2 days a week? And I said I could. And within about 4 weeks, it was, can you work 4 days a week? And within 3 months, it was, can you join us on a full-time basis? So I became the first CFO of that company. It was an AIM-listed business called Huvo PLC. It's still listed on AIM. It's now called Dodds Group PLC, although it's a shadow of what we built it into, unfortunately, but that's life. So I joined that business, and over the next 3.5 years, we raised £60 million on AIM, bought 7 other companies, took over another public company. So I've done an acquisition under takeover panel rules and all of that. And it was an incredibly exciting but exhausting time. And after 3.5 years, I needed to do something different. So I started looking around and ended up being approached by the chief executive of another AIM-listed business that was a company that had been what I call a dot-com survivor. So that it had been one of those dot-com businesses launched in the late 90s and was still around in 2006. And they were looking for an experienced AIM-listed CFO. I joined them, and we did some expansion stuff. And then in the spring of 2008, we got wind that our largest global competitor was up for sale. So we raised 28 million on the stock exchange, bought them, did a huge global integration, ripped out a lot of costs, did corporate reorgs and all of that. We were operating in 23 countries around the world. Came back to the city and said, we've done all the integration work, we've done everything, it's all running according to plan. And the following week, Lehman Brothers went bust.
Oh, God.
So that was challenging, because when you've done a major global restructuring, it's hard to move quickly. And when £6 million of revenue that you're expecting in Q4 doesn't materialize, it falls all the way to the bottom line. So there were lots of changes. The chief exec got fired. A new chief exec came in. We did a rescue rights issue. I got the debt refinanced. But it was pretty clear to me that the new chief exec and I didn't see eye to eye. So I decided to leave. And that was at the end of 2010. And then I had what I call my midlife crisis moment. I launched a wine business.
Why? So from what I want to describe is just fast-paced, high finance, M&As, restructuring, raising funds, reorgs, to wine business. How the heck did that happen?
Well, so I was sitting with my wife and kids talking about that I wasn't happy and was looking at moving on and wanted to do something different, and spent a lot of time kind of thinking I want to follow my passion. And after talking with a lot of friends and family and thinking about it myself, it boiled down to either wine or music. as my two kind of core passions. And both of my daughters, who were then teenagers, just looked at me and said, "Dad, you're too old for the music business, but wine would be perfect." So I launched a wine business right into the heart of the post-financial crisis crunch. Nobody wanted to buy wine. Nobody knew me as someone who knew anything about wine. And even though I was passionate about it, yeah, it was an interesting experience. I still have the wine business today. I still have a handful of clients who basically outsourced their wine buying to me. I'm the wine business's largest customer by some measure. So, as my best friend says, I get to drink good wine at wholesale prices and enjoy my hobby in a tax-effective way.
That's the finance and accounting side of you kicking in there.
Exactly.
David, so.
Exactly. And so over the last 8 years, I have built up a portfolio of different finance roles, a number of companies where I've invested in the companies as well. And that's kind of morphed and adapted and changed. And earlier this year, I published a book. So my book is called Add Then Multiply. And basically, it tells the story of the journey I've been on, particularly focused at the fundraising and the acquisitions and the exits and all that. So I've developed a methodology called FACE, which stands for Fund, Acquire, Consolidate, and Exit. And so that came out in July. I'm delighted to say that it became an Amazon #1 bestseller. And I'm now looking at building up mastermind programs to work with founders of entrepreneurial businesses. I'm sector agnostic. I want to find people who are interested in growth and who are open-minded to the fact that they don't necessarily have to own 100% of the company in order to scale up, and that actually they can create a lot more value by raising external capital and doing acquisitions.
Wow, I don't know about how our audience are thinking about your story or processing it, but David, I mean, sounds like an amazing whirlwind of just so many brilliant experiences. You know, I'm actually trying to figure out where to start. Maybe let's go through some of the note I've been taking.
Sure.
So and we'll link it into our audience. So one of the things I thought you raised a lot, it was around the being involved in the PR industry early days.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of that, I mean that I don't know if that's changed much or whatever, but I guess in terms of the expectation on finance professionals. I suppose we're now expected to be a bit more visible to the business nowadays. I think that's a bit of a buzzword, getting out from behind our desk and all that sort of stuff. You know, having worked in PR yourself and observed the industry up close, I mean, is there any sort of lessons we could learn in finance that we could bring into our work so we could be a bit more visible or learn from public relations?
As you touched on, Andrew, get out of your office, get out into the business, talk to the people who are on the front line, talk to the people who have the relationships with the clients, talk to the other directors in the company, let them know that you're interested in them, let them know that you're interested in what's going on, find out from them what is it they want from you, as opposed to you just saying, you know, here's this month's financial statements. And, you know, beat someone up because their budget for revenue was 100 grand and they only hit 97. And, you know, just deal with your colleagues in the business at a human level and show interest in who they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, okay, so look, that this just makes complete common sense to me. And I'm glad you laid it out that way, David. But really, I mean, there's nothing difficult to that, is there? I mean, in your experience, going through those things, I mean, I completely exactly get what you're saying, but for our audience, is there anything to be worried about or be aware of when they're doing that?
So, as you say, there's nothing difficult about it apart from inertia. And it's very easy as finance professionals to say, you know, we've got these deadlines, we've got these schedules, we've got to get this stuff done. It's, you know, nose to the grindstone, let's get on with it. But if you're a leader in the finance function, if you're a leader in any function in an organization, you've got to get out and know the people that you're dealing with who are your, you know, effectively your customers. And I guess having run my own business for a long time, it's different because I understand that kind of customer interface. And if you've only ever worked in a big company in the finance role, perhaps you don't understand that as instinctively, or as viscerally. But just put yourself in the perspective of, yes, I've got an important job to do as a finance professional. How could I do a better job? Well, interact with the people who need what I'm providing and find out if I'm providing them with exactly what they need. And it could be that actually, just from a simple conversation with, let's say, a sales and marketing director, all of a sudden they'll say, well, actually, what I really need is this, and I can never get it. And you just think, oh my God, that's so easy. I can produce that for you every day, every week, whatever. And just get that relationship going and demonstrate on a one-to-one connection basis how you can add value to other people. But and ask them what they want.
Yeah, it comes back, but like it seems like asking a lot of questions, not just to them, but also how we overcome the inertia as well.
Yeah.
And using that as an excuse not to do it. When actual fact, when you mentioned the key word there, I think, David, value is the key word there.
Yes.
Is how do we find the value? Is it more valuable that, to the business, not just ourselves, but to the business, that we try and make our deadlines, or how we just balance going, asking and engaging, building connections with the rest of the business?
And if I can just jump in there, find out what the other people value as opposed to what you think they might value.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Although I do find that, though, for accountants and finance professionals, Dave, I found that very difficult because it sometimes feels like we need to know all the answers to be seen as credible and accurate and so on. When actually you hit the nail on the head, it's not really about what we think or we're expected to know what the other person wants. The best way is just go ask them.
Yeah, earlier in my career, I always thought I had to know all the answers. I had to be the smartest guy in the room. I had to do that. I think, as you get older and gain more experience, you come to realize that it doesn't have to operate that way. And actually, if you go about being the guy who thinks he knows all the answers, people can kind of think you're a bit of a know-it-all git. And it's okay. And again, perhaps you wouldn't say in the middle of a board meeting, oh my God, I have no idea and I've never thought of that. But if you're in a one-on-one discussion with someone and they come up with something and you don't know the answer, look at them and say, wow, that's a great question. I don't know the answer, but I'll find out.
Yeah, that's. And again, that's playing to our strengths in finance. We typically have a broad view and we're very quick at figuring out where the answer will lie. Or who might know the answer because of that broader visibility and access to data and decision makers. So I'm glad you made that point, because we wouldn't want listeners going away and in boardrooms saying, I don't know. That probably would be a career limiting move. So thanks for throwing that in there, David.
No worries.
And then just following that through, you then sort of go on to become a consultant. You said you never sold before.
Yeah.
Consulting is pretty cool for accountants and finance professionals because, we're relatively smart. We know a bit. We've got some good models, good training. I suppose on the other hand, then with the gig economy emerging, it could mean that the future for a lot of us will be in working for ourselves. What was the biggest challenge or eye-openers for you, David, when you jumped in?
I would say the biggest challenge for me, and it was even bigger when I launched the wine business than when I launched the consulting business, was having, and it was in my head as opposed to anywhere else, but was having the credibility to go out and it was like, in the wine thing, I thought in my head, well, I know everything about wine. I've gone to night school. I've done my wine trade qualification. So it's great. And I can talk about wine. And I would go out and meet people that I knew in the city who I knew had lots of money and who I knew enjoyed wine. And they were like, well, you're the CFO of an AIM-listed business. Why are you trying to flog me wine? And I just didn't get that at first. And, eventually it came through. And I'm so grateful to the people who did get that and who are still clients of my wine business, but it's very, very small. So it's a hobby, not a business. But no, in terms of like the gig economy and all of that, I think I would say two key lessons that I've learned, and I would never have thought of them beforehand, but just having been through the experience. The first one is don't try and be all things to all people. Find something that you're really good at, that you're known for, and become a specialist in that area. You know, if you think of all of the opportunities that are out there as being in a great big pie, well, it doesn't matter if your slice of the pie only takes up, 1 or 2 degrees of arc out of the whole 360 degrees. If you can dominate those 1 or 2 degrees of arc and be known as the expert in that area and be known as the guy or girl who knows everything to do with that and who has the contacts, you will have more than enough work. You'll get paid better because you'll be much more credible. And it seems counterintuitive, but it's true. When you actually get approached by someone and say, oh, can you do this? And you say, actually, that's not what I do, but I know someone who does it. That gives you huge, huge credibility. And I've had a couple of things where I've said that to people, and 3, 6, 9 months down the line, they've come back to me and said, hey, remember me? I've met someone who needs what you do, and they've referred me in, and I've won clients as a result of that. So that's number one. And then number two, when you're in the face-to-face selling situation, you need to really, I think the most important thing is, don't think, oh my God, I've got to sell this gig because, I've got to put food on the table and the mortgage bill's coming up at the end of the month and all that. You cannot go into it in that mindset. If you do, you're sending all these signals out and people are just going, ooh, there's something weird here. What you want to do is you want to get into the mindset of the person you're talking with. What is it that they value? What are the problems that they face? What are the issues that they need resolving in their world? And once you understand that, if what you offer can help them, then you can offer it to them, not, hey, I'm trying to sell you something, but hey, I know what your problems are like. I've done this before. Would this help? Blah, blah, blah. And that might lead to a sale. And equally, and again, it comes back to the other point, if once they've told you what they value doesn't match with what you do, don't try and flog them something.
Agree. Yep. Yep. Very true. I love those 2 bits of advice there, David.
Thanks.
And look, there's another area I think our audience could do with your advice on, and I could as well. I dabbled in the private equity world as a consultant myself, and I would say I found the pace really, really tough going. It was just as well I was commuting from where my family were in Ireland to London every week,
yeah.
So they didn't see the crazy hours I worked. But again, you might have got a better handle on it when you were out there raising the funds, doing the M&As, reorgs, restructurings and exits and so on. How can someone best prepare, if that's at all possible, for a career in such, I'll call it high finance, but a really sort of a brutal, demanding area of finance, such as you involved in? How does someone prepare?
Question. You have to be ready for the intensity, and it can get very intense. And I remember many occasions sitting in lawyers' offices at 3 o'clock in the morning, haranguing over 1 or 2 final points in the sale and purchase agreement. And you kind of get used to that, but I guess then the most important thing is when you're doing that, you've also got to be able to find your downtime. And that can be really tricky. If you're working in an organization, let's say if you're working for a PE firm or a corporate finance house or a big bank even, it can be very intense and relentless. And it's really, really important for you to find a way that works for you, that works within the organization you're working in, that allows you to have downtime. And so, for instance, so I've had quite a busy week this week, but this afternoon, my wife and I are catching a train down and then catching the ferry over to the Isle of Wight to visit our daughter and son-in-law for a long weekend. And that's been put into the diary, and like at 3 o'clock, I'm gone, I'm signed off. I'll be back on Monday afternoon. And it's just important to have that. And, sometimes you can only do that for an evening or on a weekend. And sometimes you work in organizations and they get very demanding, and you need to reach a point where you say, I'm willing to do that for a certain amount of time, but, at the end of the day, I remember years ago, one of my early mentors, I guess I'd call him, said, you know, every now and then you've got to ask yourself the question, is my job worth dying for? And I've never answered yes.
But it's a serious question.
Yeah, it is. And you know, and I've been through intense periods, and they are, you know, that period with the global integration when we bought our largest global competitor. I mean, over a 12-month period, I did 13 trips to Los Angeles, because the other company, their head office was in LA, and so we were out there negotiating the deal and all that, and then the integration, and then I had the job of shutting down their head office. So, you know, there was a lot of away time from the family, and you know, you've got to work out ways to balance that, especially when your kids are young.
Definitely, and you know, with such long haul travel, I know we're going into details here, David, but like, again, was it that sort of similar principle? You just had that time or discipline around the downtime, so that you could, you know, not just invest in your work, but invest in your family too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. And you know, in this day and age with communications and stuff, it's so easy. You know, you can call anybody for free on WhatsApp or FaceTime or, you know, Zoom calls and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it makes it much easier to keep in contact. It's just important that you do.
Yeah. I completely agree on that one. Now, I can't believe we've been talking for as long as we have, and there's a few more things I'd love to get to. One of them is, I thought you underplayed it a bit when you said you're a best-selling author.
Yep.
A lot that title gets banded around a lot, but the reason why I think, you know, you need to probably call it out a bit more, David, is you actually did that without changing the selling price of the book, like a lot of folks do, like out there.
That's correct.
You know, to get the volume sales. So
yeah, so the book launched in July. It went live on Amazon on a Wednesday morning, and I just put a whole bunch of messages out on social media and said, you know, I mean, I'd been blogging about the book, so the people that were in my networks were aware that I was writing a book and were aware that it was coming out, and all of a sudden here it was. And I put these messages out, and when you list on Amazon, you're allowed to pick 3 categories that your book gets tracked in. So the 3 that I picked were corporate finance, venture capital, and strategic management. And so I put these messages out on my social media on the Wednesday, and followed it up on the Wednesday evening. And late on the Wednesday, I had got to number 2 or number 3 in both the corporate finance and venture capital categories. And I never broke the top 20 on the strategic management. But I remember reaching out to the publisher and saying, hey, you know, this has happened. What should I do? And he said, push it hard. He said, you're so close, you know, no idea how much ahead of you number 1 is, but keep going, because if you've made it to 2 or 3 on your first day, that's just fantastic. So I put out a message on my social media on the Thursday morning, and then I went for a run. I just thought, I'm just going to clear my head. I came back and I was up to number 2, and so I did a screenshot. And again, when you publish, you can get screenshots of where your rankings are and who's above you and below you and all that. And so I put out a screenshot, and the number 1 was Ben Bernanke. The number 2 was me, and I can't remember the title of the number 3 book, but it was something that had always been up near the top. And I decided to make it a bit more humorous message. And I wrote out and I said, can we knock Ben Bernanke off the top spot? Now, I'm imagining most finance people will know who Ben Bernanke is, but just in case they don't, he used to be the chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve Board. So kind of a big deal.
Yeah, massive deal.
And so I put this message out saying, can we do it? And pushed it and sent it out through WhatsApp groups and sent it out through Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And about lunchtime on the Thursday, I went and refreshed the Amazon screen, and my God, I was at number 1. And I just went, wow. and the most amazing thing, Andrew, was that I was still at number 1 on Saturday morning. I've not been back to number 1 since. And I don't know at the moment how many copies I've sold, because Amazon only send you royalty stuff every 6 months. So I'm sitting here thinking, I have no idea, but hey, I am a Amazon #1 best-selling author.
Yeah, no, I love you sharing that story because I wanted to serve as an example to our audience that, like, who says that, just because you're an accountant or finance person, you don't have influence. If we leverage the right tools at our disposal, you can be very influential. And also, I think there's a statistic out there, something like 80% of people want to write a book, but only 2% ever do.
Yeah.
So how the heck did you, with everything else going on, David, you're very much in demand. How did you even carve out the time to write a book? Is it coming back to
well, it's
making
interesting
sure
you
you're
asked.
consistent?
It's very interesting you asked. I had been involved in a long-term gig with a client that came to an end in December, and I had been in that business 2 days a week, and all of a sudden that gig finished, and I had 2 days a week, and I thought, this is a sign. This is the universe saying, right, David, do your thing. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to sit down and write the book that I've been talking about for a long time. I did a sort of a business accelerator program 4 years ago called Key Person of Influence. And anybody who's thinking about going out on their own or doing their own kind of thing, I would highly recommend that they check it out, keypersonofinfluence.com. And there's a book and a whole program that runs for 9 months. And one of the things within that program is that they encourage you to write a book. And so I did. I sat down and took the time. And, some days it was easy and it flowed beautifully. And there were days when I sat at my desk and I got to the end of the day and it was like, my God, I've written 300 words. And yet other days I'd just be completely in flow, and my wife would call me and say it's dinner time, and I kind of look down and go, oh my God, I've written 6,000 words today. So everyone's writing style will be different, but I think having written a blog for a couple of years made it a lot easier because I was used to the concept of writing and I had kind of found my voice and stuff. So I did the first draft of the book, and then I sent it out to 4 very good, very critical friends and said, don't be nice. I want your honest feedback. And they came back to me with a lot of really, really useful suggestions. So I rewrote the front end of the book and made some tweaks at the back end and then sent it to the publisher, and it went through a cycle of 2 professional edits with the publisher where they do the full publishing thing. And then it was all done by the end of May, and then it kind of went into the typesetting and the proofreading and all that jazz, and it launched on the 5th of July.
Yeah, well, look, again, I think incredible success, and again, just appreciate your openness and sharing that story and how you did it. And again, I mean, I know, I mean, having written a book myself as well, David, again, got to category bestseller status on Amazon. I thought it was a really great way of organizing thoughts.
And one thing and congratulations to you too.
No, it was a while ago, so probably need to try and give it another go again. But
but you know what? That's a title that nobody can ever take away from you.
No, it's true. And again, like yourself, didn't change the price or anything. Sold at the value of the book. So, but in terms of organize those thoughts, you did mention your FACE methodology, and again, I really like how you've done that. So would you maybe mind just going into that for audience? I think it was fund, acquire, consolidate, and exit.
Yeah.
But why did you go through the full cycle of particularly, including exit as well, which some people don't generally think about?
Well, my target audience for clients, for the book, for the kind of people I'm hanging around with right now, are entrepreneurs who've started a business, built it up to a certain size, and I'm kind of looking at businesses that employ 10 people or more. They've got turnover of at least $1 million, preferably 2 or more. So they've got something that they've built that is established, but maybe they're finding it hard to grow from there. And you want, because once you reach a certain size, it's all of a sudden you get a lot more competition, and you're out there pitching for bigger things and different opportunities. And I've seen that in so many businesses that I've come across, both in the profession from years ago and also during my career, where you keep slogging it out and looking at different ways to grow, and it's, well, let's try this and let's do this, and we'll do a new marketing campaign, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't, and all of this. And when you look at bigger corporates, over the years, they've all done acquisitions and stuff. And so I just started to think, let's take what I've learned and figure out how to apply it for the entrepreneur who's started the business and built it up to a certain size. And the reason I decided to include the exit side was actually, thinking back to that famous quote from Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. Yes. And, I certainly know some entrepreneurs who have built up successful businesses and are having so much fun. They're saying, well, yes, I'll exit one day, but right now I'm having a lot of fun. And then there are other entrepreneurs who say, oh my God, if only I could get rid of this thing. It's such a drain on whatever. But I'm trying to work with people who I can help them to say, right, I'm at this stage. I want to grow. I want to build this. I want to turn it into something that I can sell. And then most importantly, and this is a kind of a personal value thing for me as well, once you've sold and you've got your, I don't know, let's say 10 million or 5 million or whatever, what are you going to do next? And for me, it's really important to find people who, when you ask them that, what are you going to do next thing, I'm not particularly interested in working with people who want to sell up and make 10 million and go sit on a beach and ride around in a yacht. To me, that's just kind of selfish. I'm interested in people who want to try and change the world. So I want to work with people who say, right, well, when I've made my millions, I'm going to go out and do these good things, or I'm going to create a charitable foundation, or, I'm going to do that kind of stuff. And one of the guys I work with, and I've helped him raise money with and have an ongoing relationship, and I'm a part owner of the company. We've recently launched a foundation, and we're currently building a library at a school in Kenya. It was a school that was built by Rotary International, and they ran out of money. And so they got all of the core school bits built, but the library was a slab of concrete with steel rebars sticking up from it, in the middle of the playground. So the kids were running around. We won't even go into the health and safety issue. But they didn't have a library. So through this business, we're raising money and we're doing external activities. There's a group of us at the end of this month are going to run a half marathon to raise money for the foundation. And we're going to fund the building of this library. And it's going to be not just a library for a school, but it's going to be open in the evening so that adults in the community can also have access to it. And one of the things that I've been pushing on, because, when you get into places like rural Kenya, broadband access isn't always very good. So I've been saying, well, let's look at getting satellite internet so that, everybody can get good high-speed broadband. And, how can we make the world a better place? And that's just one example. So I'm ideally looking for people who want to grow and want to turn it. And it might be that they say, look, I'm young. I mean, I'm working with a founding team. Both of them are in their late 20s. They've built up a business that turns over just under 2 million now. They're thinking, we've done this for 4 or 5 years. It's been fun, but let's move on and do our next thing. But I'm already working with them and kind of coaching them into, well, that's great, but, what's your bigger purpose?
Yeah, and I think it's not just for those in entrepreneurs as well. I think that's key for finance professionals, whether we're working for ourselves or supporting our businesses. Is identifying with that purpose, because without that, what are we doing it for? What's the end game?
Yeah, completely. It makes us better human beings.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. So David, look, I mean, you've been giving us fantastic advice throughout the course of our conversation, and again, I want to be respectful of your time. But before I let you go, I mean, has there been sort of any best bits of advice, or maybe what's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
Ooh, that's a good question. It didn't always work, and the wine business was an example of it, but, perhaps that was just part of the journey. But I remember years ago, it was an HR director, told me about a book called Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow. That was pretty cool. And And the other one, I think, and again, it's linked to a book and other stuff, is Simon Sinek. Start with why.
Yes. Yeah. Coming back to
and that's so powerful. And as you know, if anyone hasn't seen Simon Sinek's TED Talk, go out and watch it. It's like 17 minutes. It's a TEDx talk. It's the third or fourth most viewed TED Talk, and it's fabulous. And it's the whole thing is, you know, his underlying theme there is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, 100%. So that is actually a great recommendation. I was actually going to ask you for some more recommendations, David. Obviously, our audience, if they feel that they'd find value in Add Then Multiply, buying an Amazon bestseller book, they should check that out. So obviously your book, David.
Thank you.
But also, what other resources would you recommend our audience go follow up on?
Well, I've mentioned, I mean, and again, this is if people are going out on their own. I mentioned something called Key Person of Influence.
Yes.
So just keypersonofinfluence.com, and there's a book by a chap called Daniel Priestley. I highly recommend that. Apart from that, I mean, I joined an entrepreneurs organization 6 or 7 years ago. I'm not a member of it anymore, but I got a lot out of it at the time. And I remember one of the first things that the guy who ran it said was just read. Go out and read. Read books about other people that you admire. Read books about things that you're interested in. And it's interesting. I probably read 40 or 50 books a year, and I'll often have half a dozen on the go at the same time that I just dip in and out of. I don't read a lot of fiction anymore. I read fiction when I'm on holiday, but most of the time I read nonfiction. And, you know, there's just so much good stuff out there. You know, read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
It's a great book. That was a good one.
Read the biography of Steve Jobs. Read anything about Warren Buffett. Read stuff about people that you admire. Read stuff about things that you didn't know. There is so much information out there, and it's so easy to gather. And if you don't like reading, watch stuff on TED. Watch stuff on YouTube. Don't spend too much time watching things of cats and dogs and all that kind of crap that you see. But, you know, if you're looking to develop yourself, there's so much that's out there. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but invest your time wisely in becoming what you see as a better person.
Yeah. So some great resource. Actually, we've touched on some books. One thing I actually I didn't realize was, you know, you were sort of saying there's so much other stuff out there. So I had the autobiographies as well. I picked up a book the other day on nature, reading the trees. You know, the way the leaves are on trees and the way the branches grow. I mean, and I thought that was really good to be able to pass on to our kids, because I wonder if those skills are really being discussed anymore.
Absolutely.
I'm just fascinated by nature around us.
It's funny you mention that, Andrew. A few months ago, my sister-in-law gave me a book, and it's called The Secret Life of Trees.
Oh, right.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so it's amazing, and it's just amazing what's out there, and so accessible. So thanks for calling that out, David. And you know, should some of our audience wish to continue the conversation, where's best to connect with you at?
The best way to reach me is either on Twitter, which is David_B_Horne. That's HORNE. Or my email address is DBH Delta Bravo Hotel. So dbh@addthenmultiply.com. And since the audience is all financial people, I'll say 2 things. 1, they know how to spell add then multiply, because sometimes I have to spell it out. And 2, I like to be a bit of a rule breaker, because in arithmetic theory, you multiply before you add, but I think it's better to add and then multiply, because you end up with a bigger result. So dbh@addthenmultiply.com.
I can't believe I never asked you to explain that one before, but yeah, now I get it. So, David, thanks for that one. And before we let you go, and you know, to enjoy your afternoon off to the Isle of Wight, would you maybe sort of have any parting thoughts for our audience?
Be brave. Follow your passion. If you feel you're in a job or a company or anything that you're stuck start looking elsewhere. Life is too short. Don't get stuck in things. You know, I've seen far too many people get into a situation where they've got a great job in a big bank or a big corporate or a big consulting firm, and you know, they're making good money and all that, and then all of a sudden they hit 50 years old and they burn out completely and they have heart attacks and strokes and stuff like that. Life's too short. Do not stick around in something that is not giving you value and happiness.
Yeah, that's what a great way to wrap up. So look, David, thank you just so much for sharing your career journey. There was so much in there. I don't normally keep our guests on as long as this. I was being completely selfish on behalf of our audience. So thank you so much for investing the time with us and coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.